I'm Keandra Bills Freeman.
I'm Alicia Sanchez Gil Freeman. When did we first learn about doulas?
Yeah.
I think I feel like I learned about doulas long before we actually intended to be pregnant. Most of my work has been around gender and reproductive justice. So I was really clear about the necessity of doulas, although, at the time I wasn't planning to have a child, but I knew what a doula was. I think it was still probably too late in life that I learned, like maybe in my 20s, not in like youth or like childhood. I like never attended a birth as a young person, which I think is really like beautiful and can be really crucial for young folks to understand. It wasn't my experience, but I definitely knew about a doula long before we got pregnant.
I first learned about doulas when one of my friends, who is also decided to do the parenthood journey alone. She had a doula for her pregnancy, and that was the first time I saw it up close. It was really affirming to watch this process happen, particularly for my friend who decided to become a parent on her own. So to have that level of support, that was really amazing. So that was the first time that I can recall what really understanding what a doula was, and not just reading it in a book or something. I honestly, I was very afraid. So the reason why I wanted a doula, I thought it was important for our family, was because I had a lot of fears around the birthing process, and even though I wasn't the birthing person, I just knew that hearing all of the rates of maternal mortality, especially around amongst Black folks, that was very scary for me. And so I thought that a doula who had so much practice navigating systems and speaking to doctors and understood the birthing process, that would be a way to help me feel more comfortable to take on this really major step in our lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I was certainly, as the birthing person, as a Black woman, as a queer Black woman, like not afraid, but definitely had concerns about how I would be treated in the medical industrial complex. And even though we had midwives as well, so I think we had like such a beautiful community of like practitioners and support. But still, we know there's tons of data about Black maternal mortality that can be really scary. And so having a doula really helped us, I think, feel supported. And also, I think for me, it was, even with two, like it really does take a village. It takes community. And so I like have goosebumps just thinking about how pivotal our birth doula was. Like, I'm about to cry. About how important our birth doula was in the process, like both in supporting me, but also in supporting Keandra through such a transformative and hard process. We knew that we wanted a birth doula, but I don't think we could have comprehended how crucial it would be to the process. Sorry. Yeah, so I think for us, we couldn't have imagined how transformative and important having a doula would be for the birthing process and postpartum. We had both a birth doula and a postpartum doula. And I'll just say too that we had a 47-hour labor. You really need someone to stick it out with you. And to like someone who can add. Luckily, I don't think that our doula had to do too much advocacy because we had really competent, skilled midwives. But certainly in a hospital context, it can be really helpful to have it's always helpful to have a doula. We had a home birth, or we started as a home birth. 26 hours of it were a home birth. The rest was in the hospital. And our doula came with us this was, kind of at the height of COVID. And so our doula was the only other person allowed in the room once we transferred to the hospital. And she made sure we were fed She checked on you,
Hmm.
right? She constantly checked on me. She rubbed my lower back. She reminded me to breathe. Um, she, made sure we were fed and hydrated. Not fed, just hydrated. I couldn't eat, but it was really important to have not just the practical support and skills. And our doula has had 3 home births for herself personally, so she really knows the process. Um, and just has deep wisdom and experience, but just not just the practical support, but just like the emotional support, the love, the feeling really held, um, and like you're not making things up. I think sometimes when you go to doctors, not all doctors of course, but you can feel pathologized, and our doula made us feel really seen and heard. And like what I was experiencing was just a part of a process and a journey from getting the baby from inside to outside, and not necessarily like a medical emergency, right? It's like it's a natural part of a journey. So it was really helpful to have a doula for the process.
Yeah, and I think also because the birthing team that you start with is not usually the birthing team you
Hmm.
end up with. So you might be going, for us, we had seen several midwives, but the one we really wanted ended up having to go on medical leave. So when we actually came to our birth, we did not have the person who we felt the most comfortable with out of the group. Though we liked them all, it just wasn't our first choice.
Right.
So having a doula was great because we had someone we trusted in the room with us, someone who had been there along the whole journey. And especially when we transferred to the hospital, because we didn't know any of them. We had never seen any of those
Right.
midwives. We had
Right.
never seen any of
Right.
that staff, any of those nurses. So to have someone who we knew we could trust throughout the whole process was really amazing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Having a doula through that transition process from the home birth to the hospital birth was transformative, particularly for me, because there was in the back of my mind, I always thought, are we making the right decision by having a home birth? Is this the safest option for our child? So getting to 26 hours and still not being done with laboring and really nowhere close.
Right.
I
Woo.
started to have doubts about making that decision. And I had a
Mhm.
lot of fear of like, am I putting my wife's, we putting not only just the baby's life in danger, but also my wife's. So having a doula through the transition process was really significant because it helped me feel
Mm.
like take away that sense of guilt that I had about did I make the wrong decision? Are we, especially with the home birth, there's a lot they don't know about what's happening with the baby. So there was still this fear of what if something's actually wrong and we didn't make that call earlier to transfer.
Mhm.
Having our doula really helped me calm down and understand everything's okay. Everything's okay until someone tells us otherwise, right? So to just have that trust in the process and to focus on all of the care and love and abundance that we want to bring the child, how we want to bring the child into the world. So that was amazing part of the transition from home birth to hospital birth.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of the transition from home birth to hospital birth, I think there's definitely like a sense of grief,
Mm.
right? Everyone tells you that your birth plan you probably need a plan A, B, and C to your birth plan, but you don't really know till you're in it that things change. The baby is just like not in the mood. They decided to break the water broke, but not really budging. So it was really helpful to have someone with such a wide range of experience in different kinds of births to say like what you're experiencing is perfectly normal until we tell you that it's not. And so and also someone there to help you like process your feelings about having a birth that's maybe different than what you expected. I think we had this dream about, birthing in I mean, we bought all the supplies for a home birth, this like vision of birthing in the bed. I mean, my water broke literally right next to the the bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh, we're going to be done in a couple hours. And we were wrong about that. And having a doula there to help not just again, not just with the practical parts of labor and birthing, but also with the emotional parts of like dealing with the grief. The baby came about 10 days early.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 days
Mhm.
early. We didn't even have a bag packed for the hospital. So, which was probably a fail, but we didn't have a bag packed. So you're like in the middle of the night trying to pack a bag. I'm obviously totally out of it, right? And our doula is there to help pack bags, help me get ready, help me understand what's going to happen next in the process. And I don't think I understood the grief in the moment, but because I was feeling a lot of different feelings in that moment. But having someone there to help walk you through what might be grief, what might show up later as grief, and having someone there to walk you through the process of what's about to happen was really important. I mean, I think she also helped us just assess what the options would be when we got to the hospital. So knowing like here are a couple of ways this process could go once you actually arrive in the hospital, and that was really just helpful to have some information as we moved into this big transition.
Yeah. And initially with the transfer, they told us that we couldn't have anybody. Well, they said one person, right? So obviously that would be me. So for the
Clearly.
first 4 or 5 hours, we actually didn't have our doula. And then they realized, someone on staff realized that the policy had changed like within the last 48 hours because of COVID, like getting better, or so we thought at the time,
Right.
so
Right.
so it was actually this huge sense of relief once we found out that the COVID protocols had been shifted and
Hmm.
that we were allowed to have an additional person in the room. So we did, even though we had those couple of hours of uncertainty, it was also this huge, huge sense of relief in that moment when she walks in the door
Yeah.
and we realized we didn't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to be honest and say I didn't think I needed one initially. Um, I'm an oldest sibling, Black, oldest sibling. I thought, oh, I have plenty of experience caretaking for other people. I am a natural nurturer. I got this. We got this. Where I'm not doing it alone. There's two parents here, two loving, competent, compassionate parents. We got this. And then we bring the baby home. I will never forget that first night. We came home early from the hospital because there was a snowstorm that was coming in DC. They were born in February of 2021. And there was a snowstorm like the next day. So we maybe spent how long? Maybe 24 hours in the hospital.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
like not
After the birth.
after the
Yeah,
birth,
after,
right? I
so.
think we spent about 24 hours. First of all, you get no sleep in the hospital. So I was like, I'm ready to go home. Let's
Mhm.
go. I wanted our bed, our house. Baby, that first night, that baby was up every hour and a half. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what I was expecting, but it certainly wasn't this. And I people tell you that it's difficult, that it's transformative. I don't think you really understand until you're in it. And so I think we maybe called our postpartum doula about 6 weeks in. Does that feel right?
I think we called her earlier, but she didn't have availability, so we
Fair.
had to
She was
wait.
booked and busy. Um, yeah, I think after like the first month of breastfeeding on demand, the lack of sleep, the drastic dip in like the hormonal shifts that a birthing person experiences postpartum, I felt completely blindsided by the not just the physical impacts on my body from having a 47-hour labor. Like I delivered the baby in a squat. And I was like, oh, it turns out I was in a squat for 45 minutes straight, but the adrenaline, right, and all of the feelings I didn't notice. And so I could barely walk up steps because my knees were still really in a lot of pain. I was having back pain. I was breastfeeding, and you're doing what you can, but there's just like a different division of labor for the person who is actually breastfeeding. And so we called a postpartum doula, and she didn't have availability right away, and so we were like, okay, like when when will she be here? When can she start? Because I wasn't, I don't think I knew what to expect, but I don't think I understood the gravity of it and all of the emotional and physical things that come with having a baby. And so having a postpartum doula, I mean, it really shifted my mental health. I I cannot overstate enough how having a postpartum doula, how good it was for my mental health. I think it was good for our relationship too. But also like being cared for, being checked in on as a family, right? Being checked in on as the person who gave birth, and knowing that your baby is in like safe, competent, compassionate, loving hands overnight while you get some rest was just so helpful. I think there's some important context too about the fact that we were still kind of in the height of COVID, pre-vaccines, with constant like kind of public health information shifting rapidly. And so we didn't have family with us, right? We had no family support. Friends couldn't just drop in and hold the baby for you. Like that wasn't really an option. So I felt very alone, right? Like I mean, I wasn't alone, but I think we felt very maybe isolated from community because of COVID. And so just having like an extra pair of like hands, ears, eyes, another heart be just like caring for the baby and also checking in on us felt really important at the time. I definitely was like, we don't need help. Like we will be fine. And it also felt maybe a little luxurious,
Mm-hmm.
a little privileged,
Yeah.
right? To the idea that we would have someone come into our home and help us with our baby that we chose to have felt really out of reach. And it didn't even feel like an option, to be honest. And then I remembered, like, we can do this. Like, this is allowed. This is encouraged. This is community care. This is it taking a village. Particularly during COVID when like folks are so isolated from their communities. Yeah, it really was transformative to be able to have that kind of support. But initially, I didn't think we needed it. And it felt really kind of, I said to myself, people before me have had babies without this support for generations. But then I also had to remind myself that people also had community in a way that we didn't have access to in that moment. And so our doula was, I mean, I want to say more than a doula, but a doula is community. And so, yeah, so she is like a part of our community and a part of our baby's community. And that feels really amazing. Maybe I did feel guilty about needing help, needing support. It made me feel like maybe I wasn't doing a good job as a parent, or that I was weak, or that like I couldn't handle it the way that other people handled it before. And I know that it was really quite brave to ask for help. And like the help we got was like the heavens parted. Like it was like angels came down and sang. I remember the night that she walked into our house and I was just like, here, take the baby. I was just like so happy and relieved. I still probably stayed up all night just like checking the video to watch the baby. But I probably went in the room like 10 times to be like, are you okay? Do you need water? And every time she was like, no, please go away, go to sleep. But yeah, asking for help really shifted my relationship to parenthood. It turns out not getting sleep really messes with your mental health. Yeah, I was on edge. I was so anxious. I was like up all, well, of course I was up all night. The baby was up all night. But I was up all night. We were up all night. You were working. I was pumping, right? Like there was just like and then also pumping and breastfeeding. It just felt like we didn't get a break. And so our doula gave us a sense of respite, a break, a sense of relief. Yeah, it was really helpful. There are so many things that we're navigating as Black folks in this world, right? And I want to focus on the joy and the freedom and like our child's capacity to be who they want to be in right relationship with other people and with the earth, and trying to prepare our child for like the reality of the world we live in now, while also holding the world that we desire and want and are working to create for our child and all children, all Black children, and all of our futures, and to like be good ancestors to folks who come behind us. And again, I want to focus on like the joy and the learning. And when I say learning, I mean getting to like witness the world through our child, through us, through a tiny Black human. It's like such a gift. It's so amazing to be able to nurture Black life in this world that wants us to not exist. We get to create Black life, and that is such a gift.
Well, Black parenthood means the most to me. I think the joy, the centering of joy, is of the utmost importance to me in raising our child. Though sometimes that requires that I push up against a lot of things that I have internalized about what it means to be Black in America, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also unlearning at the same time that I'm instilling in my child this sense of joy and exploration and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so the parenting is a really wild journey as a Black person, because you are trying to craft a vision for the future that does not yet exist. And it takes a lot of hope on a daily basis to center that and to try to speak that life into our children and into our child particularly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, even though it's the most beautiful thing I've ever done, it is also very difficult in the sense of the unlearning that's necessary in order to be able to create this new generation that can center that joy without feeling any guilt, and center that joy without feeling like, without the focusing too much on how others perceive them, but to say, I am a person and a human being, and it's my birthright to be full of joy and to exist and to thrive in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that Miriam Kaba talks about hope as a discipline. And I think that in a world that is so incredibly hard, so incredibly violent, particularly like anti-Blackness is global, right? And to be able to cultivate joy and hope and to watch our child giggle and be joyful is such a practice of hope for me, because it makes me believe that there will be a different world and that we can work to create it. For those of us who received a lot of Black respectability politicization in our childhood, or for those of us, particularly Black folks, who weren't able to be children because we were caretaking for our families or for other kinds of reasons, watching your children be children is both really beautiful. It can sometimes even be hard, though, to watch your kids. I feel like sometimes I'm like, no, they need to clean up behind themselves because I learned how to wash clothes at 4, right? And so like trying to, like you said, we're like unlearning some of the behaviors and patterns and norms that we've also been taught in our own lives as we parent our child. Our child will know what it looks like and feels like and smells like to be loved, to be listened to be respected. I think sometimes as Black folks in particular, we're trying to prepare our children for a very harsh world, a very harsh, violent reality that they will no doubt experience. And I think sometimes in preparing our children for that, we end up kind of recreating some of the harm of the world instead of offering our children a soft landing place to not have, instead of offering our children like a respite from that harm and that violence, because we want them prepared for the realities. But it's such a gift to think about all of the ways our baby's only 18 months old, but already we can model what it's like to validate their emotions, to use consent, right? To ask permission, to touch them, right? To not force them to interact with people that they don't want to. There's so many ways that we actually get to practice the world that we want to see through supporting our child's like whole emotional well-being and development.
Yeah, I think raising our child to be so emotionally intelligent and to understand what to and what to not accept,
Mhm.
that is very powerful for them to move into this world that
Yeah.
will try to enact harm on them. So it's really that foundation is beautiful because they'll always know who they are and what they deserve, and no one will be able to tell them different.
Right,
So it's
right.
really important to us.
And it's sometimes hard. Like I wasn't free. I wasn't free. And so to watch them be so free can sometimes it kind of bumps up against my own insecurities about respectability, or it's like you want your child to be free. But okay, free out there, but not free. You're not about to be free in my house. Okay, let's not And so like to constantly say, okay, like I have to like release control, not about everything, right? But about like some of the expectations that I had about who our child will be, how they will behave. And I have to like constantly assess, is this based in like, Black respectability? Is this based in like beliefs about like internalized white supremacy or internalized classism, right? So it's like a constant processing. You got to process a lot as a parent. Organizations like the Black Doula Project are just so crucial for Black families, Black birthing folks, even for us. And I think we knew what a doula was, having access to both the like financial support from the Black Doula Project in order to have a postpartum doula that we so desperately needed, but also to have kind of some like education and to have that support without judgment, without shame or stigma was just so crucial. Doulas can be, cost prohibitive for some folks. And many of the doulas in our lives actually do sliding scale and I believe deserve to be paid even more for the crucial life affirming work that they're doing. And having that grant support was so pivotal for us to be able to make the decision to invest in our own and our child's like well-being, safety, emotional and mental health.
The Black Doula Project was particularly great for us because it was coming from the lens of Black families and Black birthing people. And that in this process is completely just invaluable. It's amazing to have people on your side who understand the cultural undercurrents of what it means to birth children or parent children as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the Black Doula Project was just an amazing part of our journey to know that we had that support that was so specific to our values and community.
Mm-hmm. Especially too, I think like as a queer couple, there aren't a lot of places that really support gender expansive folks. um, uh, using the language of like Black birthing people feels so crucial and profound for us. And so just having both a kind of a gender affirming support and access to doulas who were also affirming of our family, affirming of our child, just was so crucial in this process, and really came at a time where we needed that support and weren't sure where to turn, and we came to the Black Doula Project. So supporting organizations like the Black Doula Project allow Black parents, allow Black birthing folks to have the care and the support that they need during some of the hardest, most transitional times in our lives. Funding the Black Doula Project is funding Black futures. It is funding Black lives. It is supporting our joy, our resilience, our health. And it's not just a public health need, requirement. it's a way of showing community care by funding organizations like the Black Doula Project.